What if I told you that one of the most powerful families in financial history slowly faded from the spotlight, not because they lost everything, but because the world around them changed? For more than 2 centuries, the Rothschild name was almost synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. Governments listened when they spoke, markets reacted when they moved money, and their banking empire stretched across Europe. But today, something feels different. The Rothschild sisters, heirs to one of the most legendary fortunes in history, still carry the name, the legacy, and the wealth, but not the same level of influence their ancestors once had. So what really happened? Did the power disappear, or did it simply transform into something quieter and less visible? Today on The Hidden Reality, we explore the fascinating story behind the decline of the Rothschild sisters and how old money sometimes loses its grip on modern power. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps The Hidden Reality continue bringing you stories that most people never hear about. To understand the present, we need to go back to the beginning. The Rothschild family dynasty started in the late 1700s with Mayer Amschel Rothschild in Frankfurt, Germany. He built a financial empire by sending his 5 sons to major European cities like London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. This strategy created one of the first truly international banking networks in history. The family financed governments, funded wars, and played key roles in shaping European economies. By the 19th century, the Rothschilds were considered the most powerful banking family in the world. For generations, their influence was protected by tradition, secrecy, and extremely careful marriages within elite circles. Wealth stayed inside the family, and decisions were made behind closed doors. The Rothschild men were usually the public faces of banking operations, but the women in the family also held enormous influence quietly through social networks, philanthropy, and cultural power. The modern Rothschild sisters inherited not just wealth, but a reputation that had been built over hundreds of years. However, the world of finance began to change dramatically in the 20th century. The rise of global corporations, central banks, massive investment firms, and new financial technologies slowly shifted power away from old banking dynasties. Families that once controlled private banking networks suddenly had to compete with giant institutions and global markets that move faster than any family business could adapt to. At the same time, modern society changed the expectations placed on wealthy families. The new generation of Rothschild women began living very different lives compared to their ancestors. Instead of quietly managing financial empires behind the scenes, many of them stepped into public life through art, fashion, philanthropy, environmental activism, and media. Some became entrepreneurs, some became social figures, and others focused on charitable work. This transformation did not mean the Rothschild fortune disappeared. In fact, many branches of the family are still incredibly wealthy today. But wealth alone does not always equal the kind of influence the family once had, when kings and governments depended on their loans. The global financial system has grown far more complex, with power distributed across central banks, multinational corporations, and massive hedge funds. Another reason for the perceived decline is the fragmentation of the family itself. Over generations, the Rothschild dynasty split into many branches across different countries. Each branch developed its own businesses, investments, and priorities. Instead of a single unified financial empire, the modern Rothschild name now represents several separate networks of wealth. Media attention also plays a role in how people perceive power. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Rothschild name carried almost mythical status. Stories about their influence spread across newspapers and political circles, sometimes exaggerated and sometimes misunderstood. Today, however, the media focuses far more on technology billionaires, startup founders, and Silicon Valley innovators. Names like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg dominate headlines in a way old banking families rarely do anymore. The Rothschild sisters grew up in a completely different environment than their ancestors. Instead of inheriting direct control over massive banking operations, often they inherited diversified investments, art collections, vineyards, real estate, and cultural institutions. Their influence is more subtle now, often expressed through philanthropy, environmental projects, cultural foundations, and global charities. Some observers believe this shift represents a decline in power. Others believe it represents evolution. Old money families often move away from public financial control and instead focus on preserving wealth quietly across generations. Influence becomes less visible, but still significant through investments, foundations, and private networks. Another interesting factor is privacy. Many members of the Rothschild family today intentionally avoid the public spotlight. In an age of social media and constant online attention, some old money families prefer to remain discreet. By staying out of headlines, they protect both their privacy and their wealth. Still, the cultural fascination with the Rothschild name has never completely disappeared. For many people, the family represents the ultimate symbol of old-world wealth and elite history. The idea that such a powerful dynasty could slowly fade from the center of global finance raises an interesting question about how power actually works in the modern world. Is power still held by historic families and quiet financial networks, or has it shifted completely to technology entrepreneurs and modern corporations? The truth is probably somewhere in between. Old money still exists, but it often operates far from the public eye. The Rothschild sisters are a perfect example of this transformation. They carry one of the most famous surnames in financial history, yet their influence now appears more cultural and philanthropic than purely financial. They represent a bridge between two worlds, the traditional power structures of the past and the rapidly changing economic landscape of the present. What makes this story even more fascinating is how it reflects a larger global trend. Many historic dynasties that once controlled industries and governments have gradually seen their public influence reduced as new types of wealth emerged. Technology, innovation, and globalization have created entirely new centers of power. Yet, despite all these changes, the Rothschild legacy remains deeply embedded in global financial history. Their early banking networks helped shape modern international finance, and their story continues to spark curiosity, debate, and sometimes controversy. So the real question might not be whether the Rothschild sisters lost power, but whether power itself has changed form. In the past, influence was measured by control over governments and banks. Today, it may be measured by technology, media platforms, global data, and innovation. As we reach the end of this story on The Hidden Reality, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think old money families like the Rothschilds truly lost their influence, or do they still hold quiet power behind the scenes that the public rarely sees? Share your opinion in the comments below, because your perspective could add an interesting angle to this discussion. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating financial families, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves hidden historical stories, and subscribe to The Hidden Reality for more powerful stories that reveal what is really happening behind the surface.